Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Let's skip the niceties this morning. I'm Josh. That's Nate. We're going to be talking about Wednesday's NBA slate here. We've got 10 games on the docket for you guys after a little 5-gamer there on Tuesday. We are going to be running through best bets in this video. We also have play a props up as we do each and every day of this season. So go ahead and like and subscribe to that page and continue to follow along with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com and use everything that we have up on the site as you're making your bets this season, including that prop finder tool to get the best juice available to you from all of these books that are giving us these bets in the NBA. Nate, let's go ahead and get right into your first best bet on the night. We're talking about Dame and them Blazers.
Yeah, it's the biggest narrative of the night, and I'm going to kind of go the other way and say, look, revenge goes both ways here. Narrative if you want. I mean, really, it's that I don't think you can trust the Bucks to cover 10.5 on the road against a Blazers team that's shown some fight lately. So Blazers plus 10.5 is the bet here. I mean, the Blazers we thought were just going to tank as hard as they have the past 2 years when they were on that West Coast or road trip across the country and they lost every game by about 30. And then they came home and they got right and they started actually playing their veterans, including Malcolm Brogdon, first and most importantly. And they have been far from a doormat. They've actually gone 6-1 against the spread when they've had Brogdon in this 9-game stretch. They've gone 6-3 ATS overall. Sixth best 3-point defense. They're number one in that department in their last 4. They're limiting second chance points, about league average in paint points, total points. But the offense is made up for it with Brogdon. Like we talk about all the time, they score like 10 more points per game almost with him in there, 6 more free throws per game. And it's just a professionally run offense. Obviously helps unlock guys like Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons when they don't have to initiate all the time. When you have a professional point guard, Jay Grant has a 125 rating on offense his last 6 with Brogdon, who's posting great numbers across the board. 22 points, 7 assists, 123 rating himself. Gonna highlight him in player props for sure based on that, because he's going head to head with Dame, who has been attacked for his defensive liabilities at times. And this Bucks defense, it's a new regime, and what we're seeing so far is sort of that old Bucks modus, which is limit 3-point attempts, limiting assists. Maybe we'll give up some things in the paint. Maybe we'll foul too much, but it's too small sample size to say much. I mean, what we do know is this is the same personnel. And if you look at the larger sample size of January, they're 0-7 against the spread on the road, like 3-12 against the spread overall. They have a -6 net rating and a 122 defensive rating when they're on the road. Like this defense is just not good enough to put a team away that that has actually reasonable talent across the board. Like if DeAndre Ayton brings it, if these guys are really motivated to say, we're not going out like chumps on Dame's homecoming night, I think Portland is live to win this game. To be honest, I wouldn't put a big unit on it, but I'm just saying like plus 10 is fine.
May I interest you in a Portland Trailblazers Dallas Mavericks moneyline parlay for 35-1 with a sprinkle?
Maybe no, I don't think the Wolves are getting punked like that.
Yeah, maybe not in that one. There's a cover possibility as people kept betting that one up, but I would agree. I was looking at the Blazers last night because it's just been looking at back-to-back numbers when it's relevant, and they're one of the best teams on no rest this season, interestingly. Not that it's hyper-relevant here. I just thought it was really interesting that they've covered the spread like 7 out of 8 times that they've been on no rest as one of the only teams. And in part, like Brogdon's played in a bunch of those games. So we do talk about it all the time. He is the difference maker for them, without question. As I always say, the adult in the room for the team. So let's go to that Houston game that I might be missing something, but I don't think Houston should be 2.5-point dogs at home against the Pelicans. And all of those statements are relevant here. At home versus the Pelicans, not anywhere else. That's how hyper relevant for the Houston Rockets. So plus 2.5, I'll go ahead and take them on that. Basically, like it's been a not necessarily a tale of 2 seasons, but they started out 12-3 at home, and since then have gone 5-5, right? And they still have nice wins at home, and they have some letdown losses, really, to some teams that they're better than. This is not one of those teams that I think is going to catch them by surprise. And the Pellies have been so bad on defense lately, just giving up all of the 3-pointers, tons of 3-pointers. And there are at least enough guys on this team that can take advantage of it. Now, Fred VanVleet has been absolutely abysmal over the last 10 games or so, shooting 40% from the field, 27% from 3. So they're going to need that because that is where their Pellies are giving up a lot of their points. Is CJ McCollum is not a good wing defender, and he's getting taken advantage of out on the wing and in the mid range and the extended mid range, etc. CJ has been punked above the break a bunch as they're giving up the most threes above the break right now in their last 7 games as they've been just hemorrhaging points. So yeah, just everything's bad for them. They've interestingly they've lost 3 in a row. They've won 4 of 5, or excuse me, they've lost 4 of 5 now. And they haven't won 2 games in a row in 21 days now since they beat the lowly Warriors at the time, who were also injured when they beat the crap out of them in Golden State. And they beat the Kings before that on that little back-to-back in Sacramento in the Bay Area. And then other than that, they've beaten a Luka-less Dallas Mavericks team, the Charlotte Hornets, Utah on the road, who is also the Charlotte Hornets, because that's how bad Utah is on the road. So I'm not impressed by any of that. They're going to have to show me a lot more. And what I always go to whenever I'm looking at this Pels team is, how are Zion and Brandon Ingram playing when they're on the floor together? And it's not good. It's back to a -8.5 net rating in 140 plus minutes over these last 3 weeks, which has been more than 7 games. I keep saying 7 games. It's like 13 games. Or 12 games. But either way, like, the defensive rating at 7th worst and the offensive rating at 7th best, I do think we're going to see a few more points in this game, which makes me little bit more nervous, because if this was a little bit more of a choppy, slow it down and make it kind of gross kind of game, I do think that favors the Dylan Brooks and even at times like Alpi Şengün, Jabari Smith. They are guys that like to get out and muck it up and get out into transition at home, at least, not on the road. So that is why I think we're seeing the points rise here. These two teams have played at like a 96 pace, playing their games averaging like 106, 104. Then we got 104, 101. And now we've got a total at 232.5. So no one believes in what we saw earlier in the season from these two teams. And now we're all just going, well, the Rockets are actually a bit better on offense than they were, and they're a bit worse on defense than they were, which sometimes goes hand in hand. When you get better at offense, you get a little bit worse at defense. So I do support a few more points, definitely more points than we've seen in this matchup this season in the 2 games. But most importantly, like, I think Houston can handle business at home, limiting threes where the Pellies actually take them. Herb Jones is out. That's their best corner 3-point shooter. That's where Houston is most vulnerable, is in the corner 3, more so than anywhere else. So without Herb Jones, their corner 3-point guy, maybe you see some Najee Marshall, but I don't like anything for the Pellies, especially with Herb Jones and the lack of defense that's going to be there without him.
Yeah, total to me is the most interesting bet here in this game. I mean, it's moved up what from 229 to 232 because of the Herb Jones news. People are accounting for him at least 3 points. I think you might still get an over here. I mean, it might be time for the New Orleans defense to return to its at least decent status, but probably not on a night where Herb is out. Yeah. And I do think, I mean, they're right now just hemorrhaging points. So like it seems like a pretty low total for against a Rockets team that's played suddenly very fast in their last few games. And you say like, oh, they might not be comfortable in an up and down game. Well, they just stomped the Lakers in that type of game. And Şengün is showing himself to be all-star worthy, whether he was voted or not. Like he is running that offense.
True.
So,
and maybe we get some more Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore speeds everything up, to your point.
Yep. The team I am going to bank on bouncing back defensively is the Miami Heat, which has been shockingly like the worst defense in the NBA for a 5-game stretch here. 3 of those in which they're trying to incorporate Terry Rozier at the same time as they're getting their teeth kicked in by the Celtics again, and just they hadn't really recovered. Maybe they were looking ahead at that game when they were playing Memphis, but whatever the case is, like they're home now. They've still gone under in 5 of the last 6 home games, and that's what I'm thinking here. Is you got the Road Kings sack at Miami. I'm going under 232. I actually kind of like this bet a lot. I mean, the Road Kings are an incredibly under-trendy team, like 8-2 in their last 10. The only overs at Golden State, you know how that rivalry goes, and at Milwaukee, we talked about with their rampant issues defensively and shootouts that they played. They've gone under in all 4 other road games against Eastern Conference teams, allowing just 107 a game. In those games, they're much better defensively on the road, and this Heat offense still adjusting, trying to get Rozier back in there. Jaime Jaquez finally got back in there, but now it's kind of a crowded room, right? And it's a clunky offense. I mean, in these last 6 home games, under 104 per game, and allowing under 110, playing at a 94 pace. That's Heat ball, right? And you get Bam on Domas, who's, he's held him to under 15 points per game in his career against Bam. It is a good matchup there. De'Aaron Fox has been awful in his career against Miami. 98 offensive rating, 18 points per game. He hasn't even been particularly good against Rozier, 21 points per game against Rozier and Charlotte in the last 8. And now there's obviously much better infrastructure behind Rozier and coaching wise. And there's, you account for the fact that he's younger and more spry than Kyle Lowry, who would be in there otherwise on Fox. Like, you definitely like that matchup defensively a lot more. And as long as Rozier isn't like suddenly finding it offensively, that's where a lot of shots or possessions are going to go to die, right? Is like Terry Rozier trying to figure out his place with this Miami offense. So just don't see a lot of points here. I think the trend will continue for unders for both these teams.
I concur. Yes, I like an under in this game for sure. That's where I leaned in this one when I was looking at it as well. You've got to get ahead of the curve. So you've got to have a little bit of cojones to go, let me go ahead and just buck the trend entirely and go against what's been happening. That's what smart bettors do. That's what people do in the NFL every week as well, right? So if you think that you found the spot where it's a good opportunity to get ahead of that trend that's going to be bucked, then yeah, I'm fully with it. We should throw it in there that the Heat are the worst offense in the league as well. Kept mentioning the defense. They have scored 101.7 points per game in their last 7 games during this losing streak, right? So yeah, that's why the unders go there for them. The unders go heavy for the Kings. The thing is, the unders haven't gone super heavy for the Heat because they've also been giving up a ton of points. But to your point, I think Jaime Jaquez might be off a minutes restriction. That's at least good for defense. He hasn't really figured out how to play alongside like Jimmy at the same time, to be honest. They kind of do the same exact thing. Terry Rozier getting in there has also crowded things a ton. That has not been figured out at all. Who could have assumed that Terry Rozier would just come in and start chucking shots? Like, you don't tell Terry Rozier, hey, you're here, man, come on and shoot. Like, you temper him from the jump. And they brought in a shooter because they're like, we need instant offense. It's like, yeah, I might have need to rethink that a little bit. But let me go ahead and close it out with a game that nobody should watch. Don't do yourself that dishonest, that lack of favor. That's the Chicago Bulls, and they are taking on the Hornets on the second leg of a back-to-back after a bad loss to Toronto. I'm calling it a bad loss last night. That was chunky and gross for them, to the Raptors, who are missing everybody. Now they come back against these Hornets, and they opened at 2.5 favorites. So not really sure why. Like this, that's the only thing that scares you is like, this is it's almost just like so stinky though, that it comes back around to being like obvious. Like, I've got to just take it and not worry about it. Charlotte is probably not going to play LaMelo. He's doubtful. Gordon Hayward's still out. Mark Williams still out. Kyle Lowry's not suiting up for this team ever, probably. I don't know why he would ever step foot on the floor for the Hornets. He'll be in a contender's uniform before the trade deadline's over. But for Chicago, 1-5 in a row versus Charlotte. Please don't make me go through all the things about Charlotte and why they're the worst team in the league. Just go ahead and look it up. They're going to be in the bottom. Like, go ahead and just filter everything to worst team in the league at everything, and it'll be there for you on defense. They're giving up tons of points to centers. Vooch should eat, as he has in the past. They are playing a lot slower, but really this just comes down to their inability to score. They're going to be playing a Chicago team that, even if they don't go all out, they have the weapons to defend Brandon Miller and to a degree Miles Bridges enough. That's going to be it. Like, they're not giving up much in the mid-range. They definitely don't give up much from 3. Brandon Miller is definitely a good dude, good at driving to the rim as well, and has that incredible mid-range game. I don't think this is the matchup for him. Obviously, there is going to be a good amount of shutting him down on the perimeter as well. I don't think they'll throw. If they had Pat Williams, I think they'd put him directly on him, but they don't. And so I can see a lot more like even Caruso taking him on the perimeter, especially with LaMelo Ball out. Like, you can just put whoever you want on him at this point without fear of too much else. There's no assists when LaMelo's in there. They score 104 points per game versus the 112 they score with him in there. They're playing at a 95 pace without LaMelo versus 99.6 with him. Fewer free throws, fewer rebounds. Like, they're just worse overall. And for Chicago, not great on the back-to-back, as is nobody in the league. But this is just a situation that defies that. And I'm happy to take 5 points. Like five or less is great in this matchup, even with Chicago on the back. I'm glad that we get the value because of the fact that they're on the back-to-back and haven't been good in these situations.
Yeah, Charlotte, you should say, is the worst team in the league when they don't have LaMelo Ball and when they don't have Gordon Hayward. And yeah, I mean, they were showing some fight for a little bit there, but now LaMelo listed as doubtful. They've got veterans in there, including Gordo and Lowry, who are either buyout candidates or trade deadline movements. So yeah, I don't really see them showing much fight down the stretch. Like you said, they're in contention for the number 1 seed more than anything else. So Bulls are a try-hard team, and I think we can expect them to bounce back.
Exactly. Yeah, I almost like the fact that they lost last night to keep them a little bit more focused and probably keep guys in there. We don't know if Zach LaVine or Pat Will are going to play for them, but if they do, that's also an additional bonus. So that's all the time we have for you in Best Bets. Continue to follow along and subscribe to that page. And until we see you next, happy betting.